Text NET to 916-339-1140 to be entered for a chance to win. No, Justin, you cannot win. Do not text NET. I know you are longing to go see the Kings and the Utah Jazz play, but you're going to have to buy tickets the old-fashioned way, my friend. Welcome in, Justin Melo from Sports Illustrated, NFL draft analyst. Justin, it's a pleasure to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'll taunt you while I'm sitting courtside at the camera. How about that? I'll taunt the camera when they pan to me.
There we go.
Justin's going to show up in a Jazz jersey just to tick us all off. Just
he would.
Diehard Jazz fan. Well, Justin, we're ramping up to the NFL draft being right around the corner here. We just had the week festival that was the NFL Combine, and there's always storylines and fun that comes out of the Combine. What caught your eye the most, or what was your biggest takeaway, if anything, from Combine week last week?
Well, I thought it was some of the big-time performers. I think the two best, and I've tried my best to narrow it down here, but I thought Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles and Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq were the two best performers. Styles posted some really freakish numbers in the vertical jump, the 40-yard dash for his time. The broad jump was out of this world. I think really establishing himself as a top 5 player in this draft, and I'm starting to believe that the floor for him is at number 5. When I look at tight end Kenyon Sadiq, I almost felt bad for him. I don't know if you realize he set the modern-day record for tight end with his vertical jump and broad jump. And then it was broken 2 players later by Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt, who I think Kayla will remember well. Pretty wild that happened to him, especially with a modern-day record. But nonetheless, I came into the Combine thinking that Kenyon Sadiq was a top 15 overall player, regardless of the positional value conversation that we tend to have this time of year. And I think he's certainly established himself as that. I could talk your ear off regarding takeaways. Participation is way down at the NFL Combine. I mean, we saw a lot of the big stars. I mean, Fernando Mendoza, obviously, the quarterback going number 1 overall, did not throw the football, did not participate in anything. We had guys like Reuben Bain Jr., the edge rusher out of Miami, did absolutely nothing. Even, a guy like Arvell Reese, David Bailey, they were very selective with what they did. Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, tip of the cap to him. He did everything. I mean, he even ran routes as a receiver and wanted to show off his versatility. I thought that, said the world of him, based on how he's thought of throughout this process. If he sat back and did nothing, I promise you it would not have hurt his pre-draft stock at all. But it said a lot about his compete level, that he was willing to essentially do everything out there.
Justin Melo, NFL draft analyst at Sports Illustrated. Justin does his homework, man. Like he knows the ins and outs of these prospects in terms of when it's time. And so we appreciate you coming on, Justin. Look, the Raiders are here. And while they're not, in Northern Cali anymore, there's still a lot of fans up here. And I know there's a lot of excited people, i.e. my co-host, about Fernando Mendoza. And I know he didn't test there. But early on, Justin, what are you seeing? Like, is he hands down like, yes, the Raiders need to take him? No doubt about it.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt about it. They shouldn't think twice, and they won't think twice. I mean, I've been told throughout this process that they're pretty much ready to turn the card in, I think, from what I've heard. So, as they should be. You watch the tape on him. He throws the football with a terrific amount of, poise is the first word that always comes to mind for me. He's accurate. He generates terrific velocity and zip on the football. One of the biggest changes, I think, for quarterbacks at the next level, a lot of college, they'll tell you, I think one of the things that takes them by surprise is how fast those NFL windows close. And when we talk about zip and velocity and arm strength, it's really not about, throwing the ball 75 yards down the field. It's hitting your 15-yarders before a defensive back can react. That makes all the world in the difference between a completion and an interception. And I think Fernando Mendoza is able to do that at a high level. Pre-snap reads, post-snap, high football IQ, was running an offense there in Indiana that really does have a lot of concepts that translate over to modern-day NFL offenses. I think the world of him from a character perspective as well. I think they think the world of him as well. Having a guy like Tom Brady involved in that organization, he's going to be thrilled with not only Fernando Mendoza, the player and the prospect, but the person as well. And, you've got the offensive-minded head coach coming in with Clint Kubiak. I think sky's the limit, and excitement should be through the roof. And I get it. You saw what he helped do with Sam Darnold this past season, helping the Seahawks win a Super Bowl, and that offense was really firing on all cylinders. And I can tell you from firsthand, I did a lot of Seahawks coverage. That was not a good offense in 2024. I mean, Klint Kubiak really flipped that entire unit on its head this past year. I had them as one of the 3 worst offensive lines in football in 2024, and they mostly returned a lot of the same players. It said a lot about what Coach Kubiak did conceptually to help change that offense in one offseason. But going back, I think the world of Mendoza. He's also mobility is another trait I didn't mention. I think he's very good at sort of creating with his legs. No one's going to fool him or confuse him for Lamar Jackson, but he's good enough to kind of create with his legs, gets outside the pocket, is able to navigate pressure, extend plays, extend the pocket, and hit those completions. So my NFL comps for him, too, and I have seen them floating around out there, and they're certainly not negative. Matt Ryan and Jared Goff. And I think that should, pretty quickly help Fernando Mendoza establish himself as maybe a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
I cannot wait for the NFL draft broadcast where they're going to say, the Raiders are on the clock, and then we all have to wait for 5 minutes or whatever it is to know that they're just going to announce.
They're going to take up every second.
Good.
They'll take up every second.
Yeah. Love it. Great. Can't wait. At least it's my team this time. We were talking about in a couple of segments ago, though, that this draft is so unique in the sense that, it's Fernando Mendoza number 1 overall, and then we might not see another quarterback in the first round. And I think that means we're in for, someone like you, Justin, who obviously covers the NFL draft as close as you do. Maybe you won't be as surprised, or maybe you will be. I think we're going to get a lot of fireworks and a lot of surprises in this first round, which is going to make for a very entertaining draft night.
Well, the positional value conversation it's the most unique it's ever been in this year, because are we within the realm of possibility that at number 2, it's linebacker, and then number 3, it's running back, and then number 4, it's linebacker again, and then number 5, it's safety? Seriously, you do not see that in the NFL draft, but there's, you pull execs around the league, there's a very good chance you remove Mendoza from the conversation. They're going to tell you the 4 best players in this draft, the non-quarterbacks, are linebacker Sonny Styles, linebacker / hybrid pass rusher Arvell Reese, running back Jeremiah Love, and safety Caleb Downs. GMs, they want to take pass rushers and tackles and quarterbacks in the top 5. Just might not be the year to do it. They're going to have that internal debate, that internal battle. Do I take, say, a pass rusher or an offensive tackle, one of the more premium positions, that's not one of the, they're not one of the better prospects in this draft? Do I want to take a B-level offensive tackle, or do I want to take an A- safety? That's the question general managers are going to have to ask themselves. And then when it comes to the quarterback, is one of these teams going to force a second quarterback? Yeah. I don't think we've got another quarterback worthy of going in the first round. But I look at teams like the New York Jets, who after picking at number 2 are picking again at number 16 and desperately need a quarterback. Do they force Ty Simpson out of Alabama there? I look at a team like the Arizona Cardinals, who are almost certainly not taking a quarterback at number 3, but are also preparing to move on from Kyler Murray this summer. Do they have enough draft capital to say, okay, we're not taking the quarterback at 3, but we can move up to 30, to 29 and make our move for Ty Simpson before someone else does. So I think it's well within the realm of possibility that we get a second quarterback in the first round, but it's kind of going to feel like cheating. It's going to have to be one of those QB-needy teams who passed on one the first go-around, coming back up to number 29 or 30. Because remember, you also get the benefit of the fifth-year option, which is pretty big for quarterbacks when we're paying them $65 million a year nowadays. So do I come up and go get Ty Simpson and guarantee myself 5 years of a rookie deal? That might very well happen on draft weekend.
Justin Melo of Sports Illustrated breaking down this year's draft and every year's draft. So Niners have the 27th overall pick this year. And I know Juwan Jennings is probably gone. They need some help at the wide receiver position. and they'll probably sign someone in free agency as well. I'm looking at some of these mock drafts. It looks like Casey Concepcion is kind of mocked there right now. What did you think about his combine performance? And obviously, I'm just in love with this kid's story. It's just so incredible, and I am rooting for him wherever he goes. Now I kind of want him to come to the Niners.
Yeah, I think everyone should be rooting for him. The fact that he was able to kind of come out and open up about his speech impediment and maybe the issues or adversity that he's had to overcome, just from really, narratives and how people are so easy to kind of poke fun at things that they might not understand. So I think the world of Casey Concepcion as a person. I thought he looked really good running the gauntlet at the Combine. You turn on the tape this past year at Texas A&M. I mean, 3 words: explosive, explosive, explosive. I mean, dynamic with the football in his hands. I thought he took a big step forward this year as a route runner. Going back to 2024, I thought he was more sort of a gadget around the line of scrimmage type of guy. But this past year, he really sort of improves his ability to run those short to intermediate routes. He's dynamic with the football in his hands, creates yards after catch opportunities for himself. And he's also a difference maker in the return game. If you're willing to put him back there on kickoffs and punts, he could flip the game. Kayla, you saw what Chimere Dike did this past year. He can really flip the field for a team. So I'm a huge fan of Casey Concepcion there at 27 for the Niners. And the good news for them in general, I think they're going to have some options at wide receiver at 27. The only hang-up I have, and it's got nothing to do with Concepcion, is I wonder how he fits with a Ricky Pearsall. They've kind of already got that slightly undersized Z/slot receiver that's not a dominant, outside X receiver type of guy. And I look at someone like Denzel Boston out of Washington, who would very much check that box. I mean, he gives you sort of T. Higgins vibes on tape with his massive frame and his catch radius. And he's got some of the strongest mitts you'll see in this class. His ability to kind of climb the ladder. The fun saying I always have on a type like him is he turns those 50-50 balls into 75-25. He's just so dominant at the catch point. Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana is another really intriguing one. A bit bigger than Concepcion, but he's still got that sort of compact, stronger build. He's really thick and dense in his lower half, and you see that pop up when he gets the ball in his hands and breaks tackles in the open field. The 49ers should be feeling really good about the options they're going to have at receiver at 27. I wouldn't rule out that, if a guy like Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State, who'll be familiar to the area, if he starts sliding because of the medicals, there are some questions about his checkered medical injury past. A guy like Carnell Tate, I don't think we know for sure where he's going. If one of those guys starts sliding, I also wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers got aggressive and moved up.
Justin Melo of the Sports Illustrated NFL draft analyst joining us and continuing kind of building upon what you were talking about there with the 49ers, Justin. When we talked to a number of different 49ers experts or commentators, media members, and kind of the universal belief is as much as the Niners are in a win-now window right now, and there are some big names out there in free agency to potentially pursue, a lot of people feel like the Niners should be prioritizing the draft to bring in that next crop of young talent, the next generation that will help them win today, but also be willing to take the torch from the current crop of older Niners stars tomorrow. When you look at this draft in general, specifically from the Niners' perspective, do you see that as a good approach to have for San Francisco? Do you think there's a lot of gold to be found, a lot of diamonds in the rough to be found throughout all rounds of this draft that could be that next generation of 49er football?
I think there are. I think this draft sort of lacks premium talent at premium positions. That's certainly the knock on it. But once you start looking throughout and you get to those middle rounds, I do think a team like the 49ers will be able to address their needs in the middle rounds as well, in addition to what they do in the first round. You pull anybody around the league, what are the two strongest position groups in this class? Pretty much everyone's going to tell you edge and wide receiver. And I'm of the opinion that the 49ers have, pretty big needs at both of those positions, right? Certainly with Juwan Jennings set to hit the market here. We know that the Brandon Ayuk situation is kind of playing out in a public, ugly fashion. And then with losing Coach Saleh on the defensive side, hoping that they could help manifest the pass rush, didn't get a whole lot of their whole lot out of their first-round pick last year due to injury. They need some they need some assets at wide receiver and at edge. And this draft is incredibly deep at both of those positions. Now, it's probably a little easier to address wide receiver than it is edge. We always say as deep as it is at edge, those players tend to fly off the board. There's a premium on the pass rush, and they're going to go early and often. But I look at other spots as well. Like, I think safety is a really deep class. I think the interior offensive line class is probably not getting enough love. I looked at watching the combine there on Sunday, and the center out of Duke, Brian Parker, the guard out of Georgia Tech, Keelan Rutledge, who, by the way, might have my favorite nickname in this entire class. He goes by Big Red, and that's the kind of guy that I want playing on my offensive line. I don't know about you, but you can sign me up for Big Red any day of the week. And then, again, the safety class is outstanding. Jake Slaughter, the center out of Florida, was another one that really caught my eye. So I think safety, interior line, edge, wide receiver, I think the 49ers will be able to get some really interesting diamonds in the rough once we get to round 3 onward.
So, Justin, one thing I know you reported, and again, you kind of get these things throughout the process leading up to the draft in terms of workouts and stuff, but you have reported that the Niners are one of the teams that have scheduled in-person meetings with Memphis offensive tackle Travis Burke. This is an interesting situation for the Niners, too. Like, it looks like Trent Williams is going to probably come back and he'll be back, but they still need to address depth on that line. What does a guy like Travis Burke bring, and how ready would he be if they decided to go in that direction in the draft?
Well, I think it kind of shows you their line of thinking. I'll be honest with you, I'm not signing up to the belief that Trent Williams is going to be gone. This seems to happen quite a bit. I'll believe it when I see it. I think Trent Williams will be playing in the Bay next season. It's just got to be on a number that makes sense, right? It all comes down to numbers. And look, maybe it's a little peek into their line of thinking. What kind of tackles are they looking into? Of course, I can't guarantee that they're not looking into others as well. But when a guy like Travis Burke out of Memphis, who, by the way, they're flying to the pro day to Memphis to meet with him there. So they're putting up a couple miles, right, on the PJ, going out to Memphis to meet with Travis Burke before his pro day in Memphis in March. So they're kicking the tires on this guy. He was at the NFL Combine. He started 11 games for the Tigers this past season at right tackle. He's a bigger tackle. I think it was 6'7", 6'8". He clocked in at the Combine, about 315, 320 pounds. He's a developmental guy, though. He's the type of guy that you might want to take on day 3. I thought he did some really good work in the run game this year when you watch Memphis on tape. He was a mauler, a road grader. Not surprising when you look at the measurements. He's got these vines for arms. I think they clocked in over 34 inches. Every offensive line coach loves length at that position, and they love the ability to try to mold and develop it. So if you can, keep a guy like Trent Williams, which I'm anticipating they will, you bring in a guy like Travis Burke who's got all these measurables but needs a lot of, technical refinement and improvement. You let him sit behind a future Hall of Famer for a year. You try to see what he can pick up. You coach him behind the scenes. You don't ask him to play right away. And those guys can, a lot of times they can make strides from year 1 to year 2. So I think that tells you, with at least that one of those first visits they have on the calendar, to me it indicates they've got some level of confidence that they're not going to be losing Trent Williams and instead, might be in the market for a developmental tackle in the draft.
Justin Melo has been grinding, covering the draft here for Sports Illustrated, and he's still got a lot of work to go, but it feels like we're in the home stretch, too. The NFL draft right around the corner. Justin, we appreciate you making the time, hopping on, and sharing some of your draft expertise with us. We hope to do it again soon.
Pleasure was all mine. You know where to find me.
Thanks, Melo.
That is the great Justin Melo of Sports Illustrated, NFL draft analyst.